computing, impact and opportunities, and some adoption for your digital journey. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Ramesh, who is the Vice President of Technology at Firstsource. Giving a brief introduction, Mr. Ramesh is an innovative leader driving business outcomes through technology, over 22 years of experience in niche startups and global technology organization. He is a leading provider of business process solutions to more than 150 global businesses in the banking and financial services, healthcare, communications, media and technology, and diversified industries. With this, please welcome Mr. Ramesh with a huge round of applause.
So, good afternoon to all of you, and I want to start off this session with talking about what is cloud. There seems to be, varied opinions of what cloud is, and having worked in organizations, in product companies, SIs, and now in BPO industry, there seems to be a lot of different thoughts on what cloud really is. So I just want to maybe set the context as what cloud is. Then I want to talk about what opportunities we have in the BPO industry, what can we do there. And then I'll talk about some key trends that we are seeing in 2022 in the whole area of cloud, and what it means, and how do we adopt it, should we adopt it, and some of those areas, right? So what is cloud, right? So I've heard varying aspects of what cloud really means. Some have said that hey, you've got your virtual servers in your data centers, it's a location, so just move to the cloud and you can have these virtual servers out there, and that's pretty much what cloud is, right? And that probably is the basis of a lot of other questions that kind of follow from that. It's expensive, it is not secure. There are issues with respect to what kind of control I'll have with it. Is it reliable? Maybe it's not suitable for enterprises at all, right? So there's varying aspects, and of course there are other things around compliance and risk, and that kind of follows around it. So the way we should really envision cloud is actually services. These are loosely coupled services, and if you look at Gartner's definition, that's kind of what they're talking about, right? Loosely coupled services that are brought together, to build an application, and using the internet technologies, right? So that's kind of way we want to look at cloud, right? And within that, there are 4 kinds of services. A lot of us might be familiar, but I'll just talk a little bit about it. Infrastructure as a service. Here you get the infrastructure, you manage it, you deploy what you want, whether it's storage, network services, and various other things. So you completely manage, you have complete control over these services, right? The second one is PaaS, which is platform as a service, where you get your DB servers, your web servers, you get everything else. So you build your application using the services that the cloud providers provide, and your focus is not on the infrastructure. You're mainly worried about your application, right? The next one is SaaS. Again, all of us are familiar. This is a complete application that a provider gives us, and we just use them, and we use our emails and everything else that we do. Those are all examples of SaaS, right? The last one, I think this is kind of important for as a BPO industry, is BPaaS, right? So when you talk about BPaaS, think of like payrolls, or maybe in the healthcare sector you're talking about complete end-to-end journey of a patient, right? Any of those usually involve multiple applications, right? So you have campaigns that you have to run with your patients. You want them to come into your self-serve portals. You want to have your agents actually have the ability to run campaigns and outreach for your patients, right? And of course, post that there's digital collections and various other things. So you're actually having an entire suite of various applications, right, that you want to create a business process around and then integrate them, and that is how you're able to actually really bring value to that industry, right? So BPaaS actually is a business process as a service, right? So this is where a lot of us are interested in, and how do we actually migrate into the cloud to make this happen, right? So look at the BPO market, the market is huge. Look at some of the research, you'll see that by 2029 you're looking at $240+ billion, right? So it's a huge market, and a lot of us are very nascent stages of the cloud adoption, right? we do have like, VMs running on data centers or even on the cloud today, but there's a lot more that we can do. And what are the business drivers? Why is this important? Some of it I touched upon. For example, there's a lot of legacy systems today, right? It is complex, it is not scalable, and we talk to our customers, or we talk to, within stakeholders within the company itself, and you'll realize that, we've built applications over, last so many years, and there is all these disparate legacy systems that have come together to make an application happen. And in order for us to, really, make a scalable application happen, you've got to really look at cloud very, very seriously, right? There are complexities in your business functions that your legacy systems will never be able to address. For example, if you look at the, I'll take an example from the healthcare sector because that's primarily where I'm focused on right now. AMA, which is your American Medical Association, actually talks about close to $10 to $20 billion of savings if the insurance claims are actually optimized in terms of the workflow, right? And the legacy systems are never able to do this. And there is a huge need for us to have disparate groups come together to make it happen. And some things around, a lot of you have talked about, AI and all of that, something as simple as, your denials that happen when you actually make a claim. You can automate that. And to be able to do that, you need the tools and technologies that the cloud offers, right? And you can never do that, using the legacy systems that we have. Access to data, having data that is, well annotated, well structured for you to be able to run your AI ML models. All of that, can be solved using the cloud. And there is also, a lot of requirements that are coming from, the regulatory bodies, right? In terms of interoperability. Again, take the example of healthcare. You have, the providers, you have the payers, where you have, your patient information that is getting stored. Now there is regulatory bodies that are now mandating that this has to be accessible through APIs, right? You cannot no longer have these data in siloed spaces, and the previous speaker actually talked about CDP, which is your, the customer data platform, right? And that is key. And if you want to implement that, you need to actually be adopting cloud, right? So those are, some very, very key important things that are happening. So if you want to run your, AI, ML models and all of that, have data in a structured manner on the cloud, right? It helps you actually, be agile, as the business needs change, as your clients' needs change, you should be able to adapt, and cloud allows you to do that much more easily. And of course, because there is, paper volume-based structures in place, it becomes low risk, it becomes, low cost. Of course, there's multi-layer security available, and I'll touch upon this a little bit about, how ransomware is, something that a lot of the IT folks actually are losing sleep. If they are not, they should be, because it's very, very critical. And that kind of security and all of that, you don't want your IT department to be dealing with. You want the kind of outsource, as we are outsourcing actually business processes, we want to outsource some of this to the actual cloud providers and let them take the bulk of that lift. Of course, we still need to worry about security internally, but a lot of this is actually supported. And as some of you asked about multilingual support and all of that, automatically comes with the cloud. So I'll talk about 6 key trends in cloud computing, and I'll touch upon what this means to us as a BPO industry. Should we adopt it? Should we not adopt it? And if we have to adopt it, how should we go about thinking in this space? The first one I'll talk about is optimize for business outcomes and not technical implementation. So this is something that I've seen across different organizations. The cloud architect or the people who implement the technology, they kind of almost act like gatekeepers, right? You go in there and a business wants to do something, and then everything has to go through this team. And this isn't how we should actually look at this, right? So you want to actually have the businesses to go, if you want to take a new business to the market, right? The best and fastest way is to actually use the cloud services and make this happen. For this, you should actually enable the business groups to be able to go and do this, right? Which means have a cloud governance body in your organization, have the best practices that are being sorted, tested out, and based on various implementations, and some of the things that are suboptimal that you may have developed in the past. Make sure all of that learning is captured in this one entity, right? Which is you can call it your center of excellence. You can have governance bodies. You can have various things, but that body should actually help the business to actually create new opportunities very quickly, right? And don't let your technical team actually control this. And this is very key. And I've seen a lot of organizations, in places where I have worked. This is a key problem that we have to solve for, right? The next is around hybrid and multi-cloud adoption. I've heard this term, and this is an interesting one. I've heard this. We do multi-cloud, right? Multi-cloud, the way I am referring to is not that you may be working with Microsoft on their Azure platform. You may be working with AWS. So you have applications that run primarily out of one of these cloud providers, right? So that's not really multi-cloud. When we say multi-cloud, you look at one of the cloud providers. They have something that is much better than some other cloud provider. Let's say Google, right? So these guys are known for their AI/ML models. They have the ecosystem that allows you to run probably the best of your analytics and everything else that you want to do. So you probably want to do let's say your web hosting and your application portals and everything on one of the cloud providers, and then you run your AI/ML models on a different cloud provider. So essentially, you no longer say that my entire application is on one cloud, but it's actually spread across multi-cloud, right? And from my experience, it is complex, it is expensive, and most times it is not more beneficial, right? So my recommendation is don't do it, right? Start off with a single cloud provider, get to know what they provide, get your applications running, and if you absolutely feel a necessity to have a multi-cloud implementation, have a clean plan around it, and see if that actually makes sense. And most times, you will need a control plane on top of the multi-cloud provider, which can actually orchestrate across these different clouds. And implementing that is also not easy, and it's a complex architecture. And I would probably recommend don't do it, right? So that's the other key trend that's happening today. That a lot of people are interested in multi-cloud, but I would say move with a little bit caution. Business resilience. This is an important topic, and I was just talking about ransomware, and this has affected a lot of different organizations of late, and we should be extremely careful. When I'm talking about resilience, think of your entire IT resilience, right? It is not about just resilience on a particular service that a cloud provider provides. You want to think of it, as an entire spectrum, end-to-end resilience for your, business, right? How do we manage this? The good thing about cloud, a lot of your services actually are resilient. They have the necessary controls in place. You have RBACs, which is your role-based access. You've got your various network security groups and everything else that they provide, which allows you to do it better than what we were able to do in data centers and on-prem. But there is also, you need to think about the architecture very carefully. One of the things that you want to do is have your production systems, right, which is have your dev and test and production all together. I'm calling it as your production systems. That is there. Have an air gap, right? Have a DMZ. Have a way to actually segregate that data out of that production system, so that because your ransomware, once it takes control of your data, right, and you start backing that up, it doesn't matter. Now your data is already infected, and you're just going to replicate it onto your backup systems and everything else, right? So have DMZs. Today air gaps are a little tough. When I say air gaps, it is physically separated. There is no way that it is not even connected through your networks, right? There is no way you can access the data. So that's an extreme way of managing it, but probably it becomes critical. But when you look at it on cloud, the way you want to think about it is I have my backup systems, right? I don't even have my environment that I need if I have to come back from a ransomware attack setup, right? I set it up only when such a thing is going to happen. You bring that up, and then you manage the data to go in there, and then bring your business back up and running, right? So you have very little connectivity from where you've stored your data in the production systems to where your backup systems are. So it is very important that we look at business resilience in a very, very critical way, right? Distributed cloud, and this is probably something that has picked up a lot in the last couple of years, especially because of the proliferation of IoT systems. So you have your sensors that are there in plants, in hospitals, and everywhere else. You're getting tons of data that's coming in, right? And trying to move this data to your public cloud is probably not worth it. You're going to have so much data that is getting generated, and not all of the data is useful, right? So you want to do some of your intelligence right there at the edge or on your data centers on-prem, right? This was primarily done by companies actually creating their own models, their own applications at the edge, and be able to run your models on that data. And this has turned out to be quite difficult because again, you've got your cloud providers giving you so many different services that are fantastic, but then you're not able to use them on your on-prem data, right? And you may not want to send the data not just because of the volume of data that needs to be sent to the cloud. It also, maybe other reasons like privacy and various other reasons why you don't want to send the data to the cloud, right? So what's happening of late is these same cloud providers are now giving both hardware and software, the services integrated that you can actually install on your premises, right? So you have Azure that provides StackHub, you have AWS that provides Outposts. These actually can run the same services that they actually have on the cloud. You can run your models, you can run various things on-prem without actually having to send the data back to the cloud. And this is something that we should look to adopt, and I think this is going to be key as we look at a lot of the different applications that we do. Especially, I would say, data that for example, you want to run AI ML models, that has a great opportunity for us to do this on-prem without having to send that data to the cloud, right? So that's distributed systems. Containers and serverless. I think most of us now have become familiar with this. So if I go to a one of my analytics teams and team members and go and tell them that, look, I can give you a system that will work seamlessly, it will be scalable, it will have the security layers in place, and all you need to do is create this container, don't worry about where you're going to run it, right? Most members will be like, hey, this is fantastic, like, this is what I want, right? So that's what the containers and serverless technologies do. So what you do is you take your, whether it's your APIs, whether it's any other business functions that you have, right? Create a container out of it, go and dump it into one of these cloud providers, on their container registry. It will then manage it. It will manage it. It will monitor it. It will look at not just scanning it statically. It will also do dynamic scans today. It will know at runtime what's happening to these containers. Is there any attack that is happening? And the good thing is, with technology like Kubernetes, which probably at the forefront now, right? You have managed Kubernetes services that are being provided by these cloud providers, right? You've got AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service. You've got EKS from Amazon. So all of them are now able to handle this seamlessly, and this is something that we should absolutely look at, right? Create containers, use functions, use serverless, and be able to run all your business logic on top of it, right? Lastly, I want to address skills gap. This is tough for the BPO industry, right? So we want to adopt all of these technologies. We don't have the skills, and you go to the market, it's extremely competitive. Most of the folks that we who are proficient in this technology, you go try and hire them. They have multiple offers, and it's going to be a huge task for us to actually make this happen. What I think is working and is working for us really, really well is we are upskilling our current employees, right? There are 2-3 advantages to this. One, of course, you're going to have more people with these skills. Two, they are more motivated to stay back in your company, right? So that's something that we are doing in a big way, and it's working out really well for us. In fact, our entire healthcare provider now is on the cloud. We moved away from having VMs in data centers and to moving to VMs in the cloud to now having everything through PaaS services, right? So this is huge, and it's important that we address the skills gap, especially in the BPO industry. It's tough to attract top talent. So this is a good way to address it, right? So that's kind of the 6 major trends that I'm seeing in 2022, which I wanted to kind of bring to everybody's attention to see how this will help us. So in summary, that's kind of what I was talking about. Have a formal strategy, have a core group that actually looks at all the latest trends and understands what is suboptimal implementation versus what has worked for us across different industries, whether it's banking or healthcare or mortgage or wherever that we want to implement this, right? Look at business outcomes. Do not get bogged down with the technical architecture and things. Those are important. I'm not saying they're not important, but always drive your strategies based on business outcomes for each of the industries that you're trying to drive it for, and have resilience into your application. Build it from day one. Think about a breach that is going to happen, and think through it right from when you're designing your applications, right? So yeah, so that's what I want to cover today. Thank you.